LEGO Monkie Kid is one of my favorite shows of all time. I don't think that really comes as a surprise to anyone who's been watching this channel for the last couple of years, but to anyone who may be new to my channel, I got into Monkie Kid just over 2 years ago now after the release of Season 4 and during the wait for the Season 4 special. As someone who's grown up with LEGO and has been a huge Ninjago fan since basically the theme's inception, it only made logical sense for me to eventually fall into the Monkie Kid rabbit hole. But until I actually decided to take the plunge, I had no idea what was in store. All I knew was that the animation and art style looked absolutely incredible, and that I needed something to fill the LEGO show void in my heart after Ninjago was in a rather uncertain spot at the time, to put it lightly. Of course, now years later, the script has kind of flipped completely, as we've seen Ninjago enter one of its greatest and healthiest eras, while Monkie Kid has unfortunately been in a very uncertain state for the last year now. But at the time, Monkie Kid really seemed like the next big thing, and for a while, it was for me. This show had a stranglehold on me for the longest time, and it honestly still influences me a ton. I of course made a bunch of videos on the show, but I also made a ton of fan songs that you can of course listen to right now on Spotify, by the way, link in the description, with the show also sparking my interest in a lot of other things. I kind of credit the show to being one of the reasons I've gotten into anime at all, with Monkie Kid having so much of its animation philosophies rooted on classic anime as well as a plethora of other things, of course. It really got me to start wanting to watch more shows in a similar vein. Granted, I'm terrible when it comes to watching shows, so I've really only seen like 5 different anime maybe, and of those I've only finished 2 of them. But still, this show played a role in getting me to step out of my comfort zone when it comes to media and explore a whole new world of shows that I always had interest in, but never really pushed myself to go seek out for myself. And not only that, but this show's ignited my newfound passion for art and character design. As for the last year now, it's been one of my main inspirations in learning to draw and create my own characters. Without this show, I'm not sure I even ever would have decided to try and learn how to draw. And even on top of everything I just said, this show also introduced me to the fascinating world of Chinese mythology, as the show is of course based on the classic Chinese story, The Journey to the West. One of the best things about the show being the fact that it introduces you to this world and these characters in such a natural and intriguing way that it only makes you want to learn more about the original stories once finishing the show. Basically everyone I've shown this show to has come out of it asking questions and wanting to learn more about the original stories it's based on, myself included. All in all, this show has had a major impact on my life, and while the many video essays and fan songs I've made have been a great way for me to show my love and adoration for the show and its characters, I wanted to do one last video to really talk about the show as a whole and give my thoughts on everything I've yet to talk about. Does this mean this will be my last ever Monkie Kid video? Well, I mean, given the way things have been going, it is certainly possible. If we ever do get a season 6, then I of course will gladly come back to talk about the show again, and I truly hope it does continue. But until then, you can consider this the grand finale of my Monkie Kid obsession. So, what will we be doing today then? Well, as the title states, I'm going to be going back through every single season and ranking them all from my least favorite to my favorite. Of course, keep in mind this is all just my opinion, and I urge you to all comment down below how you would rank the seasons, or just talk about how the show has personally influenced you over the years. I'd love to hear everyone's stories and experiences with the show, as I know I'm far from the only one to be affected by it to such a heavy extent. But, of course, without delaying it any longer, let us begin the list with what I consider to be my personal least favorite season of LEGO Monkie Kid. Now, when I say least favorite season, I have to make it clear that I adore every single season of this show. In fact, I don't think there's even really a single episode of this show that I flat out dislike. But when it comes to overall enjoyment, there's a few things that keep season 1 held back from the rest. Something I should preface is that I am including each season's special within the season ranking, meaning that along with season 1, I'm also going to be considering the pilot alongside it when I determine the overall quality. And to be perfectly honest, the pilot is far from one of the best pieces of Monkie Kid media. That's not to say the pilot is bad, far from it. To this day, it's still one of the funniest and most quotable pieces of Monkie Kid content. From Red Sun's fantastic introduction, to DBK pulling up at the shoe store, and Sean Schemmel's standout performance as Wukong, this special adds up to being an incredibly humorous and memorable introduction to the show. Though, this pilot would also show a lot of the reasons as to why Season 1 is at the bottom of the list. The pacing here can be overwhelmingly fast, with the show's plot sometimes being thrown out the window in favor of forced promotional product placement for the sets, and the morals and themes feeling a bit undercooked and overdone. All things that would be heavily improved on as the show goes on. That's not to say that the show ever completely avoids these problems. There are still episodes in season 4 and even 5 that still face some of these issues, but they're really only distractingly present during the first season. This season is also the most episodic of the seasons, which, when first watching, was never really a problem for me. I love the idea of this just being a fun, simple villain of the week type show, because each threat is actually incredibly entertaining and fun, with episode plots tending to be pretty varied and interesting. Nothing here will blow you away, and again, even if they all work together in aiding MK's overall arc and character progression, a lot of the morals and lessons learned in these episodes can feel pretty played out. But the episodes are so fun that it never really feels like a slog to watch the season. It's easy to see how this season can be kind of uninteresting when compared to the rest of the show, especially considering how insane this show gets later on. But all the foundations for what makes this such an enjoyable series are all present from the start. The characters are all entertaining, the comedy is on point, the voice acting is incredible, and my god, the animation. It's no secret that Monkey Kid's animation is one of the main selling points as to what got people into this show, and for some it's the sole reason as to why they find it so enjoyable. Even as someone who's watched a lot of impressively animated shows before and since first seeing Monkey Kid, I have still yet to watch a show that is this consistently fluid, expressive, and impressively animated the entire way through. Well, barring one season, of course. But we'll get to that. Even some popular anime and cartoons that are known for having insane animations still can't even compare to how consistently exciting Monkey Kid is to look at, with every single scene being packed with personality in the way that these characters move and express themselves. There are of course differences in the design philosophies within the first season of the show that are kind of funny to look at now, being so used to how future seasons are animated. But even so, from the start this show was firing on all cylinders with its animation and aesthetic. I mean, just look at the very first scene from the pilot. But what about characters? After all, none of the show would really work that well without having some amazing characters. So good thing every single one of the show's characters is incredible. Just like with how good the animation is, it has been difficult for me to find another show that has this charming of a cast. Not even with just our main heroes, but our main villains too. One of the main aspects that really hooked me on Monkey Kid was its variety of likable, funny, and entertaining characters. I've already made multiple videos on MK and why I think he's such a phenomenal protagonist, but this season really does a good job of setting up his excitable, bombastic, and energetic personality, really helping create such a distinct contrast as the show would slowly kind of tear down his sheer innocence. It's clear even from season 1 that even if the writers never knew how big and dramatic MK's story would later become, they knew how big of a role he would play in the world, given his role as the Monkey King's successor. This first season is mostly just small-scale adventures, but with hints like that one scene in Skeleton Key, as well as how he finds himself at the center of all these conflicts early on, it really shows that MK from the beginning has always been more than he had even been aware of at the time. The season does a lot to build MK's character slowly by most episodes having him learn some kind of lesson. The season overall mainly just acting to characterize him before season 2 would then begin to tear away his optimism about his powers and his role in the world at large. This is really the only season of the show where MK is just kind of vibing the whole way through without stressing out constantly. But MK isn't the only character we shine some light on. As in the sea of MK focused episodes, we also get a May episode this season, which is one of only like 3 May focused episodes in the entire show, unfortunately. Coming Home to this day is still one of my favorite episodes from the show, as it not only does a really good job at characterizing May, honestly doing more for her character in 11 minutes than the entire rest of the show is able to do, it's also just a really funny and well put together episode. It feels like a fun episodic cartoon story, the kind that I would watch all the time when I was a kid, while also providing some much needed insight into May's character and her struggles with her family. That's not the only standout episode here either. Calabash is an incredibly funny and even sometimes creepy episode that does a great job introducing the Gold and Silver Demons, such a fun team of recurring villains that go on to have small roles throughout the rest of the show. Impossible Delivery is honestly still one of the funniest episodes in the whole show, and how could you even talk about season 1 without mentioning episode 9, Macaque? This episode is truly the episode that hooked me on Monkey Kid. I was enjoying it plenty beforehand, being enthralled in the fun and expressive animation, being caught up in the incredibly entertaining antics of these characters, and overall, just having a great time. But Macaque is the first episode that really made me go, whoa, this show might actually have the potential to be amazing. This episode not only rises above the rest of the season by having the most climactic and cinematic animation thus far, the fight between Wukong and Macaque still being legendary, even compared to some of the big fights later on, but it also has a really interesting story with MK feeling as though Wukong is holding him back from his full potential, taking shortcuts as he trains with Macaque, only for Macaque to betray him and steal his powers. It does a great job at setting up the history between Wukong and Macaque, and man, can I just say, I have a whole video on why Macaque is an amazing character, but even just the idea of using this character at all to this extent was genius. The way Monkie Kid takes this tiny piece of Journey to the West lore and turns it into one of the most interesting and complex characters is so cool to me. Honestly, just what a good idea for this show. Overall, even though season 1 is at the bottom of my list, I still love it a ton. It is overall one of the funniest seasons of Monkie Kid, and it focuses more on its comedy rather than having many complex stories, which I can see how that can be a big turnoff for some people, but for me, I honestly love it. I love the Villain of the Week format, I love the episodic structure, I do take issue with how simple some of these lessons and stories are, but they are presented in such an entertaining way that it can be hard to complain. The season honestly just feels oddly nostalgic to me because even though this came out far, far after the time when I was a kid watching cartoons like this first season reminds me so much of those kinds of shows. It feels like something that I would have watched when I was younger, and I can imagine a whole show of episodes just like the ones presented here. Well, I'm really glad Monkie Kid would later go on to evolve into a much larger story and explore much deeper themes. I don't think I would have complained if the entire show was just this. It's so fun and charming that I can't help but love it. But with that said, why don't we go ahead and move on to my second least favorite season of LEGO Monkie Kid. Okay, I know this may come as kind of a shock to a lot of people. Season 3 is by far the season I see discussed most when people talk about their favorite seasons, but as it was Monkie Kid's first attempt at having a fully serialized story, there are unfortunately some storytelling decisions that I take issue with. But I think by the end of this segment, you'll come to find how much I still adore this season. A lot of what I'm about to say when it comes to the negatives have already been said in much greater detail in a video I've already made on the channel, so I'll try to summarize my thoughts here, but there's also some things I haven't mentioned before in the past as well. Basically, my main problems with the season come down to how May is handled, and how the Season 3 special is paced and concluded, as well as the overall season feeling kind of unfocused as a whole. Season 3 is all about our team of heroes needing to collect the 3 rings of Samadhi so that they can fight against the Lady Bone Demon, with MK having lost his staff, meaning he needs to learn how to use his Mystic Monkey powers without it. Overall, it's a classic fetch quest plot, a staple of LEGO shows at this point, and to be fair, I have no issues with the plot itself. I think allowing our characters to venture outside Megapolis and go on a literal journey to the west was an amazing idea for this season, and leads to a lot of interesting locations to explore and unique conflicts for our cast to interact with. And I especially enjoy the twists with there being a secret 4th ring that Wukong had been hiding from the others, eventually being revealed to be inside May as it had been passed down to her through the generations. It's a simple yet incredibly effective build-up and climax as we watch Wukong's flimsy plan fall apart and see what ramifications that has on the story and our characters. Except, while this big moment in episode 10 is incredible, it unfortunately doesn't actually really amount to much, as from this point, the show has a 45-minute special left to wrap up the entire show's story from up to this point. Like I said, you can watch my video on May if you want more details as to why I take issue with how she's written here, but her being the 4th ring of Samadhi and having to learn to control the Samadhi fire is an incredibly promising plot development that just doesn't get the time or focus to really feel like it was well used. The story here never really builds upon what we know about May or helps us explore more about who she is as a character. We don't really get much insight into how she feels about what Wukong had done, or even see much of how the events of the previous episodes have affected her. She just kind of becomes more of a plot device than anything, and any meaningful development or focus the character could have and should have gotten is basically completely wasted. And it's just a huge shame because not only did this have the potential to be a really interesting and complex story, but it also just leaves the big finale of the season as a whole to feel kinda hollow as a result. The Lady Bone Demon's defeat not really feeling like much of a reward for any character progression, but just the plot happening. Another reason that contributes to this that I didn't mention in my whole video about May is MK's lack of any real development here too. The season chooses to place a lot more focus on the show's amazing side cast, which I honestly love. I'm so glad we get more focus on characters like Pigsy Tang as well as Macaque having a huge role, which we'll get to later. But it kind of leaves MK in this weird spot where, in what is the first major story-driven arc of the show, he doesn't really get any arc to go through. He has struggles he faces for sure, but it really just comes down to him doubting his ability to defeat the Lady Bone Demon, and then just relearning powers he already knew before when he had the staff. Even episodes like The Winning Side, that show him re-unlocking a power in this big climactic scene, have no real personal challenges or lessons related to it. This is just supposed to be some big payoff, but there isn't really any lesson to be learned in this episode. It's just him fighting Macaque and wanting to save his friends, unlocking his powers out of sheer desperation to be strong enough. Compare that to an episode from another season like Shadowplay in Season 2. This episode is clearly linked to how MK had been feeling after meeting LBD and being without a mentor after Wukong had been gone the whole season. The episode explores through Macaque how MK and his desperation to become stronger and prove that he can save the world from the Lady Bone Demon without Wukong ends up accidentally pushing his friends away. Macaque, of course, weaponizing this against him as he tries to prevent him from becoming a repeat of Wukong, and accidentally hurting those closest to him, which would be a big reoccurring theme throughout the rest of the show, and MK's arc in particular. There's a clear moral here about remembering what's really important to you and letting others help you, giving MK a rather rude wake-up call while helping to characterize Macaque in a really interesting way. Meanwhile, in Season 3, MK doesn't have anything even close to that, and that's just one example of an episode from Season 2. There's a clear progression of MK's character throughout the previous seasons that just kind of feels like it's on pause here. And yes, the season, like I said, puts more time into having episodes with the sidecast as the focus, but there are still plenty of episodes that could have featured some more interesting things for MK to grapple with as the season would build to the final confrontation with the Lady Bone Demon. As a whole, his whole speech at the end about the world not being perfect and still being what you make it rings kind of hollow as you don't see him struggling with that idea throughout the season. If anything, the real message of Season 3 seems to revolve around the importance of friendship and why having stable, honest, and powerful bonds with people is so important. That message being explored completely by Tang and Macaque. But there are other ideas throughout the story that support this idea, like with MK, May, Wukong, and even Red Sun, but for whatever reason, the season just never really connects these together. See what I mean when I say the season feels a bit disorganized? We have this clear central theme that could work really well about friendship and the importance of being honest and open, and how that could be the answer to what can make the world worth living in, even if it's not perfect, but the show doesn't make that connection. Instead, that theme is introduced in episode 8 of the season and really only heavily pertains to Macaque's arc, which is fantastic, by the way. I wouldn't change anything about how Macaque is written here other than maybe making him more of a complex foil to MK in the winning side like how he was in other episodes, but it really feels like Macaque and to an extent Tang are the only characters that come out of the season getting a extremely satisfying story, which is kind of strange considering Tang only has like 1.5 episodes of focus, if even that, while May has far more screen time placed on her, yet they still weren't really able to say anything about her character. I really think Season 3 could have been a lot stronger if we had every character tie more into this one central idea, especially with MK and May, instead of splitting the story up into a bunch of different morals that could be connected but just aren't. Give MK a story throughout the season that relates to why his friends are so important to him, so that the speech at the end has a lot more context and impact. You even have a really good starting point with this scene of MK going to hug May while she's struggling with the Samadhi fire. We know because we've seen 2 seasons of the show before this that they're really good friends, but test that friendship more. Give them some more challenges to go through during the runtime of the season before this moment, and let these challenges that they face at the end have an even stronger resolution as they learn something from it, instead of just meeting up again later like nothing happened. Keep the side character focus, but let each side character's story showcase why MK is so important to them and vice versa. Use this time with everyone together, or even when separated into teams, to strengthen the bonds between these characters and test their relationships. Keep the story with Macaque and Tang, but make the fallout between Mei and Wukong play into that same idea. Have Mei go through a similar situation to Macaque as she's betrayed by Wukong, but in the end have Mei's perspective on friendship act as an alternative viewpoint to Macaque. While Macaque concluded that he couldn't trust anyone but himself after losing trust in Wukong, Mei ends up having to learn the opposite. That even if there are challenges, she can't just run away and isolate herself from her friends, and that the world is only worth saving because of them. Which could even tie into the fact that Red Sun is also kind of having a mini redemption here and learning to open up to people as well. The story is all there, but the season just doesn't really go for it all the way, instead leaving the plots to feel disconnected and not super impactful as a result. The big moment where everyone comes together to defeat the Lady Bone Demon, while still being really cool, not really holding the weight that it could have. But even with that all said, I can't deny I still love watching this season. Yes, like I just illustrated, I have a lot of problems with the plot and the pacing of the story and how the ideas are organized and presented. But for every problem I have with the plot, there's a moment in this season that will stick in my mind forever as I just think on how good it is. Getting to have Wukong along for the ride here is just so much fun. Even if I wish they did more with his character and his dynamic with Mei, it's still really fun to see more of him and how he interacts with the rest of the team. He honestly gets some of the biggest laughs out of the season. His fight with Najah at the beginning of the season is also incredible. And speaking of Najah, I love this guy. Such a cool and funny character that is so seamlessly integrated into this season and story. The dinner scene in the first ring is comedy gold and also a really fun way to get more backstory on the Samadhi Fire. Love that whole episode so much, honestly. That one moment in Cooking with Chungha with Pigsy watching himself on the TV honestly pulls at my heartstrings every single time. The feeling of getting to meet and be part of something that has inspired you for such a long time isn't an incredibly common feeling to see portrayed, and it's something that resonates with me a lot. Genuinely such a small but powerful moment that has always stood out to me. Benched is of course a great episode, besides the fact that MK is kinda unnecessarily mean to Tang, which I know is for exaggerated comedic effect, but always kind of rubbed me the wrong way. I don't know. It could have at least been a good moment of growth for MK to realize how he had been discarding Tang's feelings, but that never really happens, unfortunately. Barring all my opinions on how the story plays out afterwards, episode 9 and 10 of season 3 are so jaw-droppingly incredible. From the music to the voice acting, animation, and script, these episodes just feel so big and dramatic, and I love them a lot. And while I have a ton of issues with how the special is written, there's a lot of fantastic moments like Wukong's fight against the Lady Bone Demon, Macaque's redemption, everyone coming together in the final battle, and just this really cool sense of finality that surrounds the whole special. Wish I vibed with the writing and pacing of it more, but it's still undeniably entertaining. Episodes like The Great Grand Dragon of the East, Smarty Kid, and Amnesia Rules fall on the weaker side for me unfortunately, but they can still be pretty entertaining. Overall, this season is really cool, and I'm really grateful that it pushed Monkey Kid into a more serialized and story-heavy direction, really showcasing how intense the show can get during big climactic moments. There are so many standout moments and episodes here, as well as a lot of stuff that would define the show moving forward. But all of my problems with the writing just hold it back too much for me to consider it one of my favorites. I still love it to death, and it's easily one of the most rewatchable seasons for me, but I can't help but feel like there's a lot of missed potential here, unfortunately. In the dead center of the list, we have Season 2. I really love Season 2 of Monkey Kid. Dare I say, it's the most underrated Monkey Kid season of all time. This season takes the really fun episodic format of Season 1 and builds upon it beautifully, making for some of the best and most consistently good episodes in the whole show. We've got bangers like Dumpling Destruction, Sweet and Sour, and Game On, but that's not even beginning to mention the absolute masterpieces of episodes, such as Ping Pong Panic, Minor Scale, To Catch a Leaf, and of course, Shadow Play. Honestly, the only episode I don't really care for here is the sleep bug, and even that episode has some really funny bits. This season not only delivers some of the funniest moments in the entire show, but also blindsides you with how real it can get sometimes. One second you're just watching Sandy make friends with forest creatures as he travels to find a leaf that can cure his best friend's hiccups, before bam, war trauma. No, but seriously, this episode is incredible. Finally getting more focus on Sandy and giving us insight into how he regrets his actions as a warrior and is trying to make up for his mistakes by vowing to live a life of pacifism and peace it's just so cool. It's all stuff you could gather from his appearance at the pilot, but this episode expands upon it in such an interesting way while really pushing Sandy to his absolute limit. I love this moment where even after delivering an incredibly powerful attack that punches a giant hole in the mountain in the distance, a butterfly still stands atop his hand, just going to show how even when on the verge of committing another act of violence like he had done in the past, he's so in tune with the world that even nature itself still trusts him not to. But even that isn't enough assurance for him as he just stares at the large crater that he created as it towers over him, showing that he still hasn't completely forgiven himself. It's so good. Sandy is such an interesting and amazing character that it's such a shame that this is really the only Sandy-focused episode in the entire show. But they absolutely knocked it out of the park with this one. I could not have asked for a better Sandy-focused story. Now, I've talked enough about shadow play throughout all my videos, but yeah, it's amazing. Minor Scale is absolute peak as well. That Lady Bone Demon scene literally went on to define MK's character and his struggles throughout the rest of the show. And dude, Pigpog Panic? Such a wild and wacky premise for an episode, resulting in absolute comedy gold, as MK must compete in a super exaggerated anime ping pong battle in order to free Pigsy from his addiction. It's so over the top and goofy, and the animation goes way harder than it has any right to. It being so fluid and impressive almost acts to add to the joke in its own right. It's just so good. It's the pinnacle of Monkie Kid's ability early on to do those really fun Saturday morning style cartoon episodes, just amplified so much by the sheer fact that it just has the animation quality of like a feature-length anime film for no reason. Like, come on dude, this scene is just way too insane. This show's commitment to the bit is just impeccable. And also, now that we're kind of on the topic of Pigsy, I really love how this season helps to develop MK's relationship with him. We get a lot more time here of them spending time together, and it really helps me get a lot more invested in the father-son dynamic than I was in Season 1. Honestly, even if the season still primarily focuses on MK, the season does a really good job at showing the sidecast just interacting more and spending more time together, really fleshing out the whole group dynamic as a whole. It's great stuff. I also like how the show just sometimes has episodes that Sandy just doesn't show up, and they're also just very self-aware of that fact, with Tang pointing it out on multiple occasions. And how could I talk about Season 2 without talking about Revenge of the Spider Queen? This special is so much fun. It's honestly one of the best paced specials, with so much needing to happen, but everything just still feeling like it gets the right amount of time to breathe. It feels the most like a cohesive movie to me out of all of these specials, and I just think it's a great time. Is Season 2 that deep and overall coherent? Well, not entirely, but it's not necessarily trying to be either. I think that Season 2 strikes the perfect balance of episodic fun with some really interesting overarching conflicts and story progression happening throughout. MK gets a clear arc about maturing on his own without Wukong around, having to struggle with his role as the Monkey King's successor, which is some really interesting stuff to dive into. It gives some more focus to characters like Pigsy, Sandy, and Macaque, and even ends in a way that really leaves viewers wanting more. The season does a really good job just getting you even more invested in the cast throughout their silly adventures saving the city, only for MK to slowly lose hope in himself, only for the Lady Bone Demon to leave them without a home to come back to. It's such a good escalation of events, and doesn't have a single dull moment. If it weren't for my love for the next two seasons on this list, when it comes to their story and overall messages and themes and what they say about these characters, I think I would consider this to be the perfect Monkie Kid season. It just does basically everything right. Yes, my second favorite season of Monkie Kid is the season most notoriously known for having lackluster animation. I think it's been enough time for me to say that it doesn't really bother me nearly as much anymore. Given the state of the show now, it's honestly just a miracle that the season even exists in a form where we can actually watch it at all. I don't think I really recognize how lucky we were to even get this season back when it came out, but judging from my video I made back when the season did come out, I think it's pretty clear that I've always had a deep appreciation for the season, and even a year later, that hasn't really gone anywhere. This season is special, not just for Monkie Kid, but for LEGO shows as a whole. I still have yet to see many animated shows aimed at kids tackle something as tragic and heartbreaking as Monkie Kid Season 5 does. The season is all about MK and his struggles with his identity, his past, and his potential future. I know I keep bringing up videos I've already made, but seriously, if you want a deep dive into why this story is so impactful, at least in my opinion, I highly suggest you check it out. This story just hits so differently from the rest of the show. It's not really a happy story. It doesn't necessarily have that happy of an ending. It's very bittersweet, but it's also very real. The season pushes MK to his absolute limits, really going out of its way to test him as he must come to terms with his monkey form and what that means for him. And the fact that he comes to the conclusion that the world would be better off without him is honestly heartbreaking, but makes complete sense considering everything that he had been dealing with. The way that the Lady Bone Demon and Azure Lion continue to rub off on him and convince him that he's only destined to hurt those that he cares about is devastating to watch unfold. It really goes to test the ideas the show had been presenting throughout its many seasons, culminating in a finale that I think acts as the most emotionally powerful set of episodes we've gotten from this show. Does the season have problems? Yeah. The pacing isn't the greatest, as there are parts of the story that do feel rushed past and brushed aside. Given the fact that the season has no special, I think it makes it easier to forgive. It's clear that these last few episodes were meant to be a 4-episode special, but obviously due to constraints, they weren't able to do that. I still think that despite the cut episodes, the season still spends ample time on the important moments and character interactions, though it does leave episodes like Claim to Flame and Festival Fugitives to feel a little awkward in hindsight. And while I don't mind the animation anymore, I can't deny the season would have hit a lot harder and generally left a better taste in my mouth if it had been up to par with the other seasons. The fact that a season with such a stellar story is somewhat held back by not so impressive animation is really unfortunate, though, like I said, the fact that this even exists at all is a miracle, and I think the animators and artists honestly did a really good job with what they had. Not to mention, I always bring this up, but the storyboarding in this season is definitely up to par. There are some really amazing shots and just well done scenes in this season. You can even tell by some of the fights how even if the animation does seem held back, even just the way that these scenes are directed and composed, you can tell that they knew what they were doing. The team knew what they were doing. They just didn't have the time and the resources to see the vision through, which is really unfortunate. Overall, the season and its messaging is just really special to me. I think that it's the single most emotional Monkie Kid season, and every emotional beat hits really well in my opinion, which is good considering the odd pacing of the whole thing. I think despite the limitations the season clearly had, they still got all the important things right. And I'm so glad that despite the setbacks, this season still got made. Just such a phenomenal and emotional story that I'm so glad we got to see. Here we are, my favorite season of Monkie Kid. And honestly, it's just one of my favorite pieces of media to exist in general. I absolutely adore everything about Monkie Kid Season 4. Every single episode is brilliant here, including every part of the special. Every character gets interesting stuff, the animation is at its peak, and the story and themes of the season are on another level. The way this story weaves MK, Wukong, and Azure stories all together while also including fun mini-stories and arcs for everyone in the sidecast is honestly astounding. Like, how do you even begin to write something like this? It's so impressive to me, like, genuinely. Yes, I'm gonna plug another video I've made, but this is the last time, I promise. If you are at all interested in learning about how interesting and layered the writing of this season is, with just one character, check out my video I made on Azure Lion. Summarizing this character basically summarizes everything I love about this season's themes and story. The way Azure just perfectly highlights the consequences of not following the season's message about choice and self-reflection is so well done. I adore how Wukong acts as this example that both Azure and MK follow but take very different messages from, and I love the way that Macaque perfectly weaves into everything as he had just started on his path of self-redemption. I love how Sandy and Pigsy both have to come to terms with who they are and who they were in the past regarding the actions of their ancestors. I love how Tang and Mei have to work through their own personal struggles to overcome their egos and work on themselves. This whole season is about self-improvement and self-reflection. It's all about making up for your past mistakes and what it means to choose and how powerful choice truly is. And with MK at the center of everything, we really see how his role as the Monkey Kid weighs on him, not even being able to fully accept it as he refuses to believe he's anything but just a normal guy. Pitiful Creatures is single-handedly the best episode in the entire show. It's not even a contest. The way this episode breaks down MK's character and his relationship to Wukong and how he fears not only his destiny, but himself is so captivating and tragic. This guy is terrified of making the wrong choice, not being in control, or doing the wrong thing to accidentally hurt others. These fears later were reinforced as, in his mind, he basically murdered Azure at the end of the season after losing control. He didn't feel like he had a choice, and maybe because of his monkey form, that choice wasn't even his own. The layers of MK's story here and how they connect back to Wukong and how Azure acts as this distorted mirror to Wukong and who he could have been, and how MK fears that that's who he could become, it's just all so good. This season also has Allier, so, I mean, do I even need to elaborate? Rip and Tear is such a peak episode. I swear I rewatched this thing like a billion times. I love all the episodes where they find the lost ancestors of the original Pilgrims. Watching Pitiful Creatures only to go straight into the Brotherhood is one of the craziest watching experiences I think I've ever had. Like, how can these episodes be this peak? I don't understand. This is the season that truly had the show go from, oh yeah, this is a really fun and hilarious show, to, oh my god, these characters need therapy. And the best part is that it still keeps the fun and consistently funny comedy throughout the whole thing without feeling out of place or overbearing. I don't know how this show can juggle such a serious and comedic tone so well in these later seasons. It's something that you rarely see, but when that balance is hit just right, it is gold. And this season does just that. The more I talk about this season, the more it just turns into rambling, but man, I just love it so much. Monkey MK versus Azure is so good. I swear I've watched this one fight alone like 50 times at least. All the animation with the ink and stuff, like, how did they make it look this good and fluid? The way Sandy is already perfect and gets covered in gold noodle stars always kills me. That moment when Mei gets her new sword is hype as hell, and then Allier comes in and does the coolest thing ever. The soundtrack and atmosphere is so cool and intense at times. The whole scroll how is every scene in general is so awesome. Did I mention Allier? How did they seriously? How did they animate this? Anyways, yeah, this season's pretty good. Pretty good show. Go stream my music on Spotify. Okay, bye.